all things that we create have to start somewhere. It has to come to you. You have to be able to recognize it and catch it somehow. You're a passionate creative, and so are we. Join me, Brie Stockwell, and my podcast partner, Len Metcalf, as we navigate the ups and downs of living creative lives while teaching you how to do it too. Time to pull back the curtain on our creative affair. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to A Creative Affair. You're here with Brie Stockwell and
Len Metcalf, all the way from Australia. We're on opposite sides of the world doing this. Isn't that amazing?
it's so fun. I just love this. And we try and record on Tuesdays, but it's Wednesday. Anyway, we're a little bit off our normal schedule for recording, but I love being able to okay, this is this day and we have this time. And we always make time for this because we actually just love the conversation so much. And we hope you do too.
And we've got to stop ourselves talking so we can record the episode because we have such beautiful conversations before we start. And sometimes it's a couple of hours have gone and we still got to do a recording yet.
I know. But today we're straight in. And today we're talking about, speaking of today, we are going to talk about creative ideas. We've talked a lot about inspiration and getting ideas and all of those things. And today we want to talk about when we get creative ideas. Partly we want to talk about what we do with them. Like what happens? What next? I find for me that when I get creative ideas, first I want to honor them. I want to acknowledge that I've received an idea and that it doesn't have to be really important or big. It could be big or small or whatever. But I like honoring my intuition and my brain for coming up with it. And it's a little bit exciting to just give it a little bit of space to acknowledge that it exists. How about you, Lynn?
I was going to ask, how do you honor it?
Oh, um, I usually try and repeat it out loud
Okay.
because if it comes to me, it's like a little tickle in my brain or my heart. And then I go, "Oh, what is that? Oh, okay." So I either say it out loud or I write it down. Yeah, I can scribble it. I can put it on a sticky note. Um, I'll write it and see how it feels.
Mm.
So I don't have to do all of them.
Just before we get to what we do with them, I think this idea, like honoring them, in one sense, what you're saying is that you're going to give it uh, a blessing. You're going to say, "Hey, this is really important in my life," etc., etc. And when you use the word honoring, these were things that were, spiraling out of my head of what you were thinking. And then, as you were talking, I was like, "Oh, that's actually what I was going to talk about." Is that firstly, I repeat it in my head and I expand on it, and then I work on it in my head till it grows a little bit bigger. And so it might just be a glimpse, and then like I have to relax and close my eyes, and then I start to imagine it growing bigger and bigger and seeing where it goes in my mind, and I explore it. So my honoring it is a repetition, as you're talking about, which actually helps anchor it. It's the same as waking up in the morning after dreaming, isn't it? You want to write them down in your dream diary. And if you open your eyes and get out of bed and go and make a coffee, they're gone. Like they're totally gone. But if you stay there, keep your eyes shut before you even move and recount them, run them back over in your mind, you can then write them down much more easily because you've actually already gone through the memory, which is very much in line with our theory of how, or the practice of how our memory works, is we remember things that we go over and over and over. So our earliest memories in our life, we've revisited them multiple times in our life to make them stronger. And then we can remember them as we get older and older, and they become lifelong memories. So we keep revisiting them, which keeps our synapses and the whole thing alive and going. But I Also, rather than just repeating it, I love to have this expansion idea where I close and I go with it. I wonder where it's going to take me. And I start to explore that in my mind and unpack it, be creative with it. What ifs? Lots of questions.
Yeah, I love the daydream of it. You know, the whole like, "Ooh, what would happen if I did that?" And then rolling it around in my mind. Sometimes my brain is busy with other things, so if I get an idea, I have to like that's the honoring. I'm writing it down and then I'm going,
Giving
"Oh,
it time.
yeah, I wanna like let that sit and then I wanna roll it over in my mind later." For me, the honoring, I was just thinking while you were talking that the honoring actually comes secondary because once I have the idea, I actually think I want to repeat it and write it down as a way of catching it before it flies away.
Ah, I was taking that as being honoring, but yeah,
Right.
so you're thinking the honoring comes after that, after actually doing something with it.
Yeah, it's very subtle, but I like being able to go, "Oh, there it is. Oh, let's write that down." And, you know, give it a little home because I know for me, I've had ideas come to me and I just they're fleeting in my mind and I haven't done any of that. I didn't roll it over in my mind. I was kind of like, "Oh, I'll remember that." And then it goes. I'm like, "What was that thing?" And then I can't get it back because because I guess it's not meant to be. If later on a later episode, we'll talk about big magic, and Elizabeth Gilbert talks about this, but it must have flown on to someone else instead of staying with me. Maybe because I didn't write it down and honor it and all of those things. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a lovely thing to play with, but honoring it is actually choosing at the moment that you have it to either do something with it or to let it go. And of
Okay.
course, we have ideas and thoughts that we do have to let go. And we'd go nuts, wouldn't we, if we had to worry about or think about every single little thing that our mind thinks of. Um, there's so many of them, isn't it? It's for me, it's nonstop sometimes, and then there's hundreds of ideas in a day. But honoring them is, there's ones that you have that are worth pursuing, and I think experience tells you that over a lifetime of playing with art, that some of these are incredibly important, and some of them aren't so important. But I agree with you. The best way to honor them is to record them.
Yeah. And I like to. So I'll take those little snippets of something and I have a big list of ideas, or it's called my someday maybe list.
What was that? Say it again.
Someday maybe, like someday
Ah,
maybe I'll do this, right? And yeah, I find if I just take what the little bit that I recorded really quickly, like could be on my phone or wherever I'm writing, wherever I am. If I put that on my someday maybe list, then I go back to it every few weeks and just go, "Oh, is there anything here that feels like is bubbling to the surface, is rising to the surface that wants me to work on it?" And so, or is there
hmm.
something here that is in line with something I'm already doing? And could I add this in or could this enhance what I'm doing? Things like that. But I know that anything that goes on that someday maybe list, I don't have to do because I think sometimes we as creatives think that all ideas that come to us are worth doing. Like, we got this idea, we have to pursue it, and we just don't. And I find it really helpful to put something, all the things on that list and let it kind of percolate. And then I can kind of rationally, when I'm in my more rational mind instead of my daydreamy, ooh, it just came to me sparkly, magical moment, then I can take my rational mind and say, okay, is this the time for this? I can ask myself questions. Is this the time for this? Am I ready to work on this? How does this feel? Do I even want to do this, or could I just like get rid of this one because it's really not something I'm actually interested, and I have done that before.
There's a lovely progression of the idea turning into a project and then actually becoming something much bigger. And we've talked about, a bag of tricks and actually, titling your projects and working on them at that end of the scale. So let's assume that that's something we've already talked about and we've got that part handled and we're in this, this what if maybe list that you're playing with. That's a really good technique, isn't it? You wander your mind through the list and see which one comes up and is exciting to play with, and then you start playing with it. And I think that this is a really important step, that you need to experiment, explore, trial, test, have a little bit of a play in it. Um, I like to say you've got to suck it and see. You've got to taste it to see whether you like is it a taste that you really like or not? So by trying it, you can start to get a gauge of, is this going to work? Is there enough in my mind? And the work doesn't have to shine immediately. I think a lot of us, we get put off when we have this idea and then we go to do it and it doesn't work. And those of us that are stubborn enough, absolutely stubborn enough to keep trying and playing and experimenting and see where it takes you. And of course, it's going to take you somewhere else. That makes something successful, isn't it? So we've got to, what I'm saying is that we need to experiment whether the idea is going to keep growing within us with strength, because it has to be, to get to that stubbornness, we need a conviction. It has to be an emotion arising from us that's going, oh, this is stimulating. It's catching my attention. It's pulling my focus in, and we're going to actually experiment with it.
I think I love I love all of that. Like, I think it is important to have all of those questions to just, try a little bit of it and discover if it's something we want to keep pursuing. Um, I think one of the pitfalls that we can have as creatives is immediately, because this is me, so we'll walk through the store. A little side note, sidebar. My husband and I will walk through the store and I'll see something like shiny and pretty, and I'll turn my head, and he goes, "Shiny object, keep moving. Just keep moving. It's not interesting to you." Because, you know, squirrel. Yeah. And I think as creatives, we have all these ideas that come to us, and we can be easily distracted with all of these things coming at the seemingly the most random times, right? Like, I think they come in times when we're not expecting them. I mean, certainly I'm not ever sitting around going, now let me think of some creative ideas here. I mean, maybe I am searching for something in particular, but usually ideas like all kinds of interesting ideas come when I'm focused on something else and it just pops into my mind, right? And I think it's very easy to get distracted from the things that we are currently doing that have been those ideas that we have decided on purpose to work towards. And I personally, that's why I write them on the list, because I don't want to distract myself. I want to finish the things that I started and then methodically go, okay, what's next? And also, if I get an idea that feels immediate, I check in. I have to check in. But sometimes we get an idea that feels immediate, and I'm okay with putting something I'm working on. I'm okay with putting off something I'm currently working on to do that. I just want to make sure that I'm doing it for really good reason and not just like a shiny object moment. Have you experienced that before where you're like, "Oh, I got this new idea. Let me run with that." And then you have this pile of other unfinished things over here and you're like, "Ah."
You're describing my whole life. I have, thousands, I thought that's an exaggeration, but I have lots and lots of unfinished projects. And, yeah, maybe it's a little bit ADHD ish, but finishing things is hard work for me. And I really have to work hard at that. And we've talked a little bit in other episodes about, making something. I make things as gifts or to sell or as products that for if I say, oh, I'm going to make this for Brie and I'm going to make it into a book, and then I actually finish it and I post it to you. But if it's just I have this idea about doing it, they build up, and I've got half all these things half finished, absolutely everywhere.
I think you should finish a little book and send it to me.
Okay.
I love this idea. No, 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 I'm just kidding, but it would be fun. Maybe one day I'll come to Australia and we can make a book together. Ooh, that
Oh,
would be really fun. Write that idea down. Let's do it like in the moment. We should write this idea down. We don't have to do it right away, but we're going to honor this idea that was just created.
and that's really an interesting example because there's like 5 ideas all layered
Mhm.
into that one thing, isn't there? And then they keep expanding. So one is visiting Australia, another one is doing a project together, and then making a book, and then um, so they all sort of pop on. And then as your mind starts to expand, it's like, well, how do I pay for that? Oh, okay, well, I could do this, or I could do that, or we could do run a workshop together, or we have to go on a trip together while we're doing that, and it just keeps
It is
spiraling out,
totally
doesn't it?
spiraling at the moment.
Yeah, and that's the whole point, isn't it? And it's a really good example of how a tiny little idea, um, you have to nourish it and feed it. And so this first reworking it and then exploring it, and then, as we're exploring that very example that we just had, we're not negging it. We're not negating, we're not saying no. It's not possible. And if we did that, it would stop. As soon as we say, "No, that's impossible," that idea just disappears back into um, the path and fades off into oblivion. But, as you feed it and nourish it, it keeps growing, like, "Oh, what would the book look like?" And so by asking a question like that, the idea continues to grow and gets bigger and more exciting and keeps going. It becomes alive and it's honoring it.
I already know it's half monochrome, half color.
That's an assumption.
It's called a creative affair. We just are doing this right now. Wouldn't that be fun? Oops, sorry, just bumping my mic. Wouldn't that be fun to make a book called A Creative Affair?
Oh, it would be. It would be absolutely lovely. You can fill it with lovely words about love and connection and communication and conversations.
Yeah, and creativity and friendship and inspiration. I don't know. Okay, we'll put it on our. I'm going to put that on my someday maybe list. Let's see where it goes.
I just made a book and sent it to Canada to be auctioned for um, suicide prevention.
Mm.
And I did that collaboratively over the internet with my photographs, their words, and I handmade it and bound it. Did an edition of 9 and posted them all off. And yeah, like the idea about the book, it becomes one whole idea. And then there's the other one, like, well, visiting Australia. Well, there's another one that we could pursue off down into that thing as well. And I think it's similar to brainstorming, isn't it? I think that having a positivist attitude to it and rolling it off and keep adding and testing and exploring in our minds. We can do that with other people, of course, but I love to do this alone. that the idea grows and you can test it out and go, yeah, okay, that's actually a good one. Or, um, no, that's too expensive, or that's not going to happen in the next few years. I have to wait till there's a time for that to happen.
I find if I'm thinking, "Oh, that's too expensive," but I really wanna do it, I'm just rolling off and finding a way to make it work. How can I make
Yes.
that work right now, you know? I find I know I was just thinking something I have on my list, because I've been talking about personally, I've been talking about making an ebook all year and it hasn't quite felt right. Like it's on my list. I want to make some ebooks, but they haven't quite felt like solid yet, but they're on my someday maybe list. And I find that as I go back and look at my list and go, okay, I want to do that. And how do I want it to be? Like, how do I want it to look, or what's the feeling of it? And I'm not making it yet, but I'm rolling over in my mind some different ideas. And I just, like, this has been months and months, this has been percolating. And I just recently have, as I touch on it over and over again, I just recently have really discovered how I want to do them, more of how I want to do them. And I think it's because I've been giving it time instead of forcing myself to have to do this because I think I should or because it's on my list. Uh, Certainly for a little while, I was like, I'm going to create an ebook. And then I was kind of having some negative self-judgment because I wasn't doing it, like, I felt like I was procrastinating, but now I know I was putting it off because it just wasn't gelling yet, and I think sometimes we do need to come back and they're worth doing, but it is not quite time, and we need to touch on it a little and do the mental exploration, how would that look? And then as our minds will our brains are amazing. They will absolutely work. They will absolutely work on anything that we assign it. And so I was like, okay, how can I be actively kind of looking for ideas and figuring out how to do this without putting in a lot of like huge mental effort? And then sometimes I'll touch it. How about that ebook? What does that look like? So, or like I'll be on a walk and be thinking, rolling it over in my mind, what if I did this? What if I did this? And so I guess that is actively working on it, right? Without being super engaged in the creating of it, if that makes sense.
I When you said that our brains are just incredible, my understanding for me, and maybe this is for you as well, is that our unconsciousness, our subconscious, that whole other part of our brain that isn't that awake thinking bit that we think is the center of the world, um, is actually working really hard on it and exploring it and solving the problems. And of course, it can take years to figure out, the logistics and the look and the feel and what words have to go in there and restructuring them. And that work isn't just always all conscious. A lot of it is subconscious. A lot of it is taking in more information, processing it, stuff that happens that we don't consciously register as what's happening. And slowly, and this is one of the beautiful things to learn and to become better at as an artist, is trusting that process, that it needs time. Your really good works often, not always, but often need the time to mature over a longer period of time. And what you find is there's tiny little breakthroughs that just surface here and there, to keep adding things. I've got a lovely example that I'm working on a book of the Tarkine, and I've got the introduction, I've got the photos, and the words were really stumbling me. And so I was reaching out and asking different people for the words and to write them. And I've been talking about it and I've been giving presentations about the words, um, about the photographs with thousands of words in them, talking and talking to these photos. And I just had, like, I've been working on this for years. I just had this very sudden little moment, and it was a little dream flash where I was looking at the words and they were mine. They were captions next to the photo. And it was triggered through hearing someone say, I love reading captions when I'm looking at photos. And I'm like, oh, okay. Connecting the words and the photos. And suddenly, at that very moment, the actual mechanics of the book started to unfold really suddenly. And it's like, okay, we're starting this tomorrow. I actually now know exactly how to do this. And I've been working on it and thinking about it and trying all these dead ends. And one day there's just an extra little bit of information comes in here and a tiny little bit here. And then you put them together and it's like, oh, the words are actually already in me. I've been saying them for a very long time. They're in my presentations. I just have to pull them out and bang, you have this, another major step forward in turning something into reality. So this honoring over time is incredibly important, isn't it?
Yeah, I was thinking while you were early talking in that one little segment, I was like, "Oh, it's trust." And I'm seeing it in my mind in all capitals because so often when it's interesting because so often when I am thinking about creativity and ideas and my own inspiration and my work, it really boils so much down to trust. Can I trust myself to do this? Even if I gave myself a timeline, could I trust myself to finish it in that amount of time? So often we just want to you know, trust the process. Hashtag trust the process. But we want to trust ourselves. I think it is really huge. Actually, I was just on a trip and I've been mulling over what this ebook would look like. And I have some more firm ideas, or, well, maybe not more firm, but more specific ideas now. And as I kind of turn over those ideas while I'm out, while I'm doing things, and during this trip, I had something come to me, and I'm like, oh yes, that's helpful. Like I had a little mini idea, a little idea within an idea come to me, and I actually did go write it down so I didn't forget it. And I've been thinking about those two things together. It's more of like a direction to go with the ebook. And I'm like, oh, yeah, this makes sense. Do I want to change the phrasing of it? How do I want that to look? And so that's kind of where I'm at now, but it's feeling more solid. And, as we do this, as we assign our brains to work on something, because this is something I really want to do, it's on my someday maybe list because I'm not actively like really working on it. As I am thinking about it, I do have these little mini ideas that come to me that I also want to write down and honor to see if they fit within that bigger idea, which I think is an interesting process as well. And then trusting myself that at some point I'm going to be able to put those things together in a cohesive way that really does make sense and feels good to me. So we'll
Interesting.
see.
There's a few things in there that we've you've been saying today, and like you use a list, a someday maybe list. I don't tend to use a list. I have journals. I I'd love to have a journal. I was at a folk music festival 2 weekends ago, and I'm sitting in the audience, and my mind starts going nuts with ideas as the music's washing over me, and I didn't have a journal. And like, yes, I can type it into my phone, but I find that quite clumsy and doesn't work so well for me. So after that act, I walked straight down the street to the shops and I bought another journal and I bought a pen. Actually, I didn't have to buy a pen. The lady said, I said, have you got any pens? And she goes, yeah, yeah. And um, she said, what sort of pen? I said, I don't care. I just want something I got to write now. And she goes, oh, she digs into the drawer and pulls out one of the staff pens and gives it to me and says, here you go. Here's a pen. And for me, it has to be blank. It can't have lines in it. And that is because I need to draw pictures often, like a little diagram. And,
Mm.
you said the word trust. So if this was my journal, I would just write trust in capital letters on one page and turn the page and go on. And then maybe expand that, or maybe I'll put it in the middle and turn it into a mind map. Or if I'm working on my book, I'll draw a little picture of what, you know, what I'm imagining in my mind with the words, and I'll put a little arrow there, captioned by Len Metcalf, and it's going to talk about these things, and they become memories. Now, I don't spend my life rereading the whole shelf. There's a shelf. I'm on my second shelf of journals, and I've been keeping them my whole life. Art journals, and they're full of drawings, writings, dreams, ideas, notes. Like when I go to a workshop or a conference or a speaker, I take my book and I write copious amounts of notes in there. And research shows that by putting it onto paper, we're actually reinforcing it into our mind and into our memory, allowing our subconscious to keep working on it. So by just writing it into the book, it's going into my someday maybe list that's actually not a written list. And I have so many students ask me this, I don't know what to do next. And I say, well, write a list of 10, maybe 20 of the things that you would like to do right now. Just sit there right now and write a list of the 10 and write them all down and see which ones come up. And of course, you can add more over the next few weeks. Now that you've written that list, do what you said. Just let your mind pursue them, peruse them over and over. And which one rises to the surface? Which one comes up as being the one that you need to do right now? Put a circle around it, put a few stars on it. You don't have to worry about the rest. There's your starting point. This is the one that you can then start now on, because you've considered a whole range of other projects or creative ideas that you could do, and then that one's already just surfaced out of it, and that's worthy of your time. And then you could say, well, which one do you do second? And well, you could wait till you finish the first one before you even think about that. You don't. You've got your starting point. Of course, you could order them in order if that's the way that you like to work. But once you have the one that you're going to go with, this is where you need your conviction and your stubbornness and your enthusiasm to grab it like a bulldog and go, right, I'm going to shake the hell out of it and see what I can do with it. I'm just explaining what Momo looks like when he gets his toy. He grabs it and he shakes it back and forth, and he's going to, if it's a snake, he's definitely going to kill it. So that's what you need to do with the idea.
Wait, he gets snakes?
Oh, no, I'm scared. I worry about that. He's a
Okay,
terrier.
just
I think
wondering.
that's how he works.
Okay. My husband calls me a pit bull because
See, yes,
they grab things and
they don't let go.
yeah, they don't let go. And so when I have decided, then you can't shake me off of you can't shake me off of it. And he already knows. And what's interesting is since I now know that about myself, I am more careful about what I decide to do because I know that I will pursue it no matter what. And it might be something that I'm maybe not as interested in doing as something else. And so I just want to be, since I know I tend to do that, then, it can work for me when I'm in it. And it can also work against me when I like start it. So that's funny that you mentioned that process because that is exactly what I do with clients. I actually just did that with a new client, and I know this person we all have these ideas about all these things we want to do, but we're not sure, which to work for, and honing in on which feels the most important and is really important. And I actually do like, I don't know about you, Len. I like having three at a time, one that feels like bigger, and then a couple of ones that feel smaller so that I can go back and forth between them, kind of like projects, pulling out different ones at different times. But I like having a few things going on because then I'm really not bored. I mean, if it's a big one, there might be smaller, like my impossible goal. There might be smaller things, within it, but I I sometimes get bored easily. I'm like, I don't want to work on that today. I
Mm.
want to do this other thing. Or like maybe I have low energy. And so I'm going to pick the one that takes a little bit less energy unless I really have like a personal deadline. I say personal because I don't have a lot of like other people's deadlines. They're all self imposed. So
I think if you're a pit bull, and this actually describes me too. I'm very stubborn, very, very stubborn. Really struggle with people telling me what to do, and so with uh, the more I can explore it before I get too stuck into it. So this, when the idea first pops up and you're playing with it in your mind, seeing where it could go and whether it's got legs is really worthwhile for me because uh, I do. I put everything aside and get stuck into an idea and it will consume me. And I want to make sure that they're valuable ones to be doing rather than ones that maybe it's not the right time for. And of course, you have to start them sometimes or often to see whether it's one that you're going to hang on to and keep going with.
I I like to sometimes if I'm more serious about possibly starting, I will write down uh as many steps as I can think of, especially like the first steps. Okay, what would be the next first step to do? And kind of list out, okay, all of these things. And if I come to one, if I come to one that's maybe going to take a little bit more time, I will decide depending on how much time and energy I have, I will decide to either do it or put it off for a little bit. Like even just exploring the next steps really helps me like hone in my decision making. And also within that, I'm asking myself to, when I get the idea and when I'm exploring it, I'm thinking, does this align with my priorities and values? And that's actually something that I ask my clients too as we're doing this process. Is this in line with your priorities? This project, like what are your priorities and what do you value here? Like where do you where do you see yourself going, with a long vision? And do you can you see this fitting into it? And so I do that for myself. Do I see this fitting into it? Because something may seem super fun. Like recently I've had some invites to do some stuff. They all sound fun and amazing. And I know that really I'm going to have to make some choices about whether or not I do them, whether or not I do all of them. I'm probably going to have to pick and choose because ultimately these are like invites from other people. And while I love all of the opportunities, I may decide that I want to create something on my own that feels more important. And so I just want to explore those things like what are my priorities and where do I want to be headed, and kind of doing that all at the same time with of like what are the next steps. So I think I think it's a really valuable process to go through if you're more serious about doing a project. Some of mine are really just like writing it down and going, huh, that might be fun in the future. In fact, that's most of it. I don't know about you. I don't know if you do that, like if most of them are like, oh, that might be fun in the future.
I think that's a really important point because if you look at how much you actually produce, like let's uh, pull it down to individual artworks. Like how many artworks do you actually print in a year? And do you actually make? How many books do you make a year, etc., etc.? And it's in a handful, isn't it? It's not hundreds, it's not thousands. And yet, let's measure ideas. Is there one a day? Is there 10 a day? Is there 100 a day? More likely, it's 30 or 20 or something like that, or maybe 50 a day. And yet, when we add that together, we've got thousands and thousands over a year, haven't we?
I don't know, Len. I don't get that many. You must be really special. Maybe the audience could chime in and tell us how many ideas they get. This would be really interesting to know, like, how many ideas cumulatively you get over like a day, week, month, because I know I don't get that many ideas, you know. Maybe I'm afraid that I have to be Pitbull and chomp onto them.
The point being, though, is that you have more than you make. And it's for me, it's overwhelmingly so many more than actually what I produce. Like, so you want to maybe list is huge, and yet the ones you're actually working on is three. And if you really did everything on your list, you may be looking at a lifetime to do those things.
Yeah,
And like I'm also
or a year of overwhelm because I'm trying to do them all.
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
So this is where we're really good at sorting, aren't we? We put all the ones that aren't aren't well enough formed or haven't got our attention in a pile, and we can come back to them whenever we need to. And we pull out the ones that we need to work on today, and they're the ones that we concentrate on. And like my ideas are not always just about artworks, but they might be about travel. So it might be, you know, get a van and go and live in America for 3 years and travel around as a digital nomad. And so that idea is linked to making art and what sort of art would I make? And the driver is actually to make art as you're traveling around. So, is that an idea that I totally discount? It's the same sort of one as, hey, I'm going to come to Australia and let's make a book. They're all tied in together, aren't they?
Right.
The
Yeah.
art, the who I am, who I'd like to be, what I would like to do. And in amongst all of that are these beautiful artworks that have to, and these projects that need to surface up, rise up, and become something physical. This is the honoring to me as well. And this is another whole episode, but honoring them is making them into something, isn't it? If you are really going to honor an idea and it's a beautiful one, then and it's a magical one for you and it works. And then as you're progressing along, it actually turns into something physical.
Right. Because all things that we create have to start somewhere. It has to start with this process. It has to come to you. You have to be able to recognize it and catch it somehow, right? Like it has to become maybe a part of who you are and what you want to be doing. It has to align with who you want to be and the things that you want to be doing, and that's how all things come to be, right? It's just starting with this little fleeting little magical little twinkle or tickle, you know little touch from our intuition that says, what if you could
Mm.
do this? And it's interesting, even, I mean, I don't really love saying small to big, but some things feel small and some things feel big, but anything, anything that's ever created has to start this way with this little idea. And so that's why I think this is such an important conversation because because getting it and writing it and honoring it and thinking about it and eventually possibly deciding whether or not to use it and turn it into something is it is again such a magical process. And you're right, it is how all things come to be. Mm,
It's beautiful. And they come at any time, don't they? The
yes.
middle of the night, when you're out walking, they come least when you try to make them come.
My best ones are from the shower. So I was talking to someone today, a client, and I was like, I put my phone on the little corner of my shower. And then if I get an idea, I have to wipe off my hand on the towel and then speak into my phone. Here's the thing is, because that's what we were talking about. We were talking about making it easy to catch those things. Like, how can we make it easy and set ourselves up for grabbing those things, when we need to? And so, yeah, I keep my phone nearby in my shower because otherwise it'll leave me. I already know. I need access to something.
That's why I've got journals everywhere. There's one in my bag, there's one by the bed, there's one in my backpack, there's one in my camera bag, there's 3 by my desk. You know, there's piles of them absolutely everywhere, so I can just pick them up and keep adding to them. Now it gets confusing as to where I've written what into, but that's okay because I don't often go back and look for things in there. The act of writing it down reinforces it and develops it, and it keeps growing.
Yeah, I don't find I have to write like refer back to my someday maybe list often because I already know what's on there. And if it's something that I'm not that my brain isn't really interested in addressing, it's the important ones that rise to the surface that I remember. And so I also trust that process that oh yeah, okay, I kind of know already what to do next. It's just kind of it's the trust and intuition at the same time.
It is very much so.
Y'all, I really think it is important to honor all the ideas that come to you and only decide to do a portion of them. You do not have to do all of them. You just don't. But I also think it's important to make sure you make some of them into reality. I
Mm,
I think that's why we want to leave ourselves open to having so many ideas. So, because that's the ultimate, right? Is being able to make things into reality and that are interesting and fun and light us up and make us into better people and better artists. It's awesome.
it's the ultimate honoring of the idea, but it's also the ultimate honoring of our own soul as
Hmm.
creatives, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is to actually make stuff, make shit.
Yep.
I say to people,
Yep.
make stuff, print them, do something with them, make a calendar, make a book, give them away. Um, if you're a painter, make don't think about paintings, go and make them. And you don't even have to finish them, do you? It's okay.
I have
Just
purchased
make.
unfinished. If you look behind me, if you maybe I'll post a photo of it. Right here, it's just a little piece of canvas with her brush strokes on there, and I bought it. I mean, I'm just saying that had to come from an idea. She was like, "Oh yeah, while I'm painting, I wipe my brush on this." And then I'm like, "Those are really pretty colors," and I bought it. So, it doesn't even have to be, doesn't have to be a big thing. It just doesn't. Like we can have these little ideas that are just fun and playful and that actually take, like next to nothing to do. And those are really fun to implement. So
Mm.
anyway, we encourage everyone to just go follow your intuition, see what comes up, honor your ideas, pick something and make stuff.
Well, I think that's a good place to finish today, isn't it, Brie?
Absolutely.
Well, honor your ideas, do something with them, stop and think about them, explore them, enjoy them. It's an enjoyable process. I think on that note, it's time to say goodbye. So from me, goodbye, y'all,
I've
in a
converted
bad
you.
American accent.
No, you said it with an Australian accent. I
Oh,
can't do
okay. I can't.
good good day. No,
We say, yeah, g'day, mate.
good day, mate. How'd I do?
See you later.
Oh, I like that better. See you
Catch you
later.
around.
See you
See
later.
you later. Catch you around. Next time. We'll see you next time.
That's right. See you next time, y'all. Bye. Well, wasn't that fun? As we close another episode of A Creative Affair, would you click on your podcast player and leave us a 5-star review and share with another passionate creative like yourself? Thanks. To find out more about our creative work and mentoring, visit Len at lenschool.com or me, Brie, at creativemindscoach.com.